So now we understand qualitative research design. There were three we earlier discussed: in-depth interview, the focus group discussion or a focus group interviews, and the projective techniques. Let's study them one by one. So we are understanding different methodology. Under qualitative, the in-depth interview is another aspect we studied earlier. There are three types: in-depth interview, focus group interviews, and the projective techniques. In-depth is a non-structured conversation between the interviewer and the respondent. Subjects like sex education should be made compulsory. Your views. So then you ask her, there cannot be a formal questionnaire. So respondent is supposed to discuss with you, and interviewer is supposed to kind of probe, understand, redirect conversation, etc. Okay. Freedom is given to articulate the thought. There is no restrictions. He cannot be reprimanded, etc. Okay. So therefore, there is openness. The person feels empowered to talk. Now, for various reasons, there can be some, limits are placed. However, broadly, it is an open discussion designed to uncover predispositions. What is there in the mind? It should uncover the unconscious feeling, the views, etc., the need, hidden fear, etc., as the case may be, the likes, dislikes, etc., are offered a complete, permissive atmosphere. In the sense, atmosphere which is created should be very, very transparent, very, very open, receptive in nature. That's the time when the respondent will open out. Okay, you don't advise, you do not criticize, etc. So that's the interviewer is not supposed to do all those things. So under the in-depth interview, it can be one-to-one or one-to-many. So one-to-one is just an in-depth interview. If it is one-to-many, it is a focus group interview. We will study this. However, there are nature of this in-depth interviews. So first is a true in-depth or a clinical. Psychologist, doctors, etc. They have this specific, approach to discussion. They are very clinical, and they will have a narrative points, on which they want to understand a person, and they will definitely involve those areas of discussion. While non-directive, this thing can be let loose, the core subject or this thing is there, and then the respondent is allowed to speak as it comes to in mind. Interviewer is supposed to direct, first understand, create a clarity of the understanding, ask him more questions, etc. So here it is a non-directive, free-flowing kind of conversation. However, overall it is done with certain objective in mind. So certain limits are exercised where the interviewer has to be smart, without empowering, without forcing, or without making the respondent abort the discussion. He has to keep this guy tuned to the key area. Semi-structured or a focus interview, here certain specific list of points are discussed, so therefore here the tighter control is needed by the interviewer. He should allow, of course, the freedom, but simultaneously he should see that the discussion do not sway away in a different direction. It should remain. Therefore, he has to moderate this. Okay, so moderation is very critical, this thing, while in a semi-structured or a focused interview. Individual in the interview requires a great skill. So the guy who's taking this has to have a great skill, needs a patience and a considerable time. Difficult to establish a right degree of confidence. Howsoever you try, the respondent may remain in a state of suspect as to why are they discussing on this subject, etc. And therefore their answers may at times be not openly coming out. The qualitative information provided is a very subjective in nature. The guy has given his share of mind. You do not know the state of mind that he is into it and why he is seeing so, etc. That aspect is not known. Only assumption is that because you have allowed the freedom to talk, you believe that the guy will be truly expressive. Technique is definitely costly, requires a lot of time. A large sample cannot be covered in a very limited time, etc. Number of individuals. So now you move from in-depth to focus group interview, or I will say the focus group discussion. Kind of the interview is when only the specific questions are discussed, kind of thing. Though it's an in-depth interview, but it is discussed on a kind of a question, this thing as such. But when you involve a group of people into a discussion, then it becomes a focus group discussion. This text essentially relates with the FGD, focus group discussion. You call numbers like may vary 6 to 12 people from the same target segment profile are invited at one time at one place. Okay, the group will get basic introduction. There is a person called moderator. Moderator will trigger the discussion, and he will not only trigger the discussion, he may at times forcibly trigger controversial subject, or he has to overall ensure that the discussion remain aligned, cannot again go very sway and cannot go really wide and far away from the subject of interest. So that's a moderation role. He essentially, moderator has to focus on three things. He must establish a rapport with the group so that his own interaction is smooth, and he sets the objective very well of the group discussion. Provoke intense discussion. He used to at the right time provoke a discussion. He should ensure that everyone participates, everyone shares their view, etc. And at every critical point, he should get into summarizing what is emerging as a group's collective and consensus based outcome. Even at that time, if somebody has an objection, he or she can participate to make the amend. So again, that may trigger a discussion. So through a discussion, through a intense arguments, etc., freedom for everyone to talk, etc., you try to read the mind. You try to compel group to arrive at some common consensus among them. That itself is a strong indicator of whether people are tuned towards your expected objective or a product or a service, or they are not tuned towards it, etc. Okay. So then the third technique is the projective technique. Here, consumers are taken into a way where he projects something. And the project is, he reveals his mindset for the given conditions, etc. What is happening is that under this technique, consumers are not encouraged to rationalize anything which is consciously or subconscious in his mind. If consumer is aware what has been done, purpose for which it is done, what is the meaning of this question, etc., then he may get into rationalizations. Okay. Now, to avoid that, there are techniques. So psychologists have developed. So say, for example, sentence completion test. I love this product because. Then he has to. I like the most about this product is this. So that way, the sentence completion. Here, it is very difficult for customers to really rationalize things. He will have to then express himself. So word association test, and you associate which word with this, kind of ink blot test. There are picture tests. Picture tests are series of pictures are shown and customer is asked to complete the story. So this way you reveal. There is also a third person test, and a customer, one approach to this is, instead of telling customer that this is all about him, you tell him that what we want to know is how will your relative or how will your friend will react. Okay. So what is done is, customer is assured that we are not talking about you. We are talking about what you feel your friend, relative is going to do in such scenario. Psychologists say that, however, these answers are reflection of his own self. And so as a result, you are getting an answer which is a reflection of him. So that way also it has been done. So this is like a little psychological aspects behind. Individuals express their feeling without being aware that they are revealing themselves. So that's the power of this projective technique. So for this entire qualitative research, this thing, we now study the other steps of the research design. So we come to the sampling unit. So researcher must define a profile of the person. This is not so difficult. Earlier also we have discussed. So say, for example, focus group. If I am doing a new rickshaw introduction, or I want to bring a feature-rich rickshaw. So focus group discussion, you will invite rickshaw drivers with own license and vehicle self-driving since last 5 years. So that's a profile. That's a sample unit I have fixed up. I will invite only if he has a 5 years of experience, he has his own vehicle, he is self-driving it. So these three conditions. Sampling units, there may be more conditions. You put more conditions to qualify. So that's of course depending on the need of a research. And so there is a profiling conditions that one need to understand. Then comes the size of the sample. Size of the sample, of course, we have studied various probability and non-probability approach. Out here it is generally will be more non-probability this thing. However, the in-depth interviews and all, you can still have a probability sampling worked out. And you, while for the others, you will have to mostly use non-probability sampling. In-depth interview, either a convenience sampling or a judgment sampling can be also used if you don't want to use any probability sampling. For FGD, you can either use a cluster, judgment, or a convenience sampling. So in a qualitative, it will go more towards the non-probability sampling type. That is what in short I am trying to tell you. So for example is given, if suppose I am doing a focus group discussion among the auto rickshaw drivers in Hyderabad, then I can cluster sampling based on the different locations where most number of rickshaws are being parked. So that's a cluster sampling. So these are the ways the procedures can be done. Instruments for a qualitative this thing, you have to use a data instruments, data collection instruments, which are generally of two type. Either there is an in-depth interview questionnaire or a checklist. Generally the checklist is more popular, but just to give you an idea, like other questionnaire, even in the in-depth interview questionnaires are there, but only difference is that they will not be close-ended. Okay, so series of open-ended questions. Okay, they are listed in a manner that you feel that the conversation is going to flow, or you expect the conversation to flow. Questions are listed in chronological order so as to pull out the desired information in the most logical manner. Okay, so it is a visualization that by after this discussion, this has to happen, and that's how the pointed questions are put in. Some here and there may happen, but it's up to the interviewer to be smart enough to see that he do not miss out anything. Okay, so at least it ensures that the various aspects of the in-depth discussions are captured. That's one advantage. Otherwise, without any questionnaire, the in-depth interview going into, as my earlier indication, is a free flow discussion, then you may miss out on few things. So it is better to have an in-depth interview questionnaire. The second approach is a checklist. Checklist is not a full-fledged questionnaire, but here you will have a points that you want to check. That will be covered. It will be mentioned as a point, and you try to see that each points are covered during the data collection drive. Okay, so checklist enables the moderator to ensure that the conversations remain aligned to the expectations, or he can revisit this to see if any point has been missed out, etc., so that he can trigger the discussion on that. So at the end, the checklist enables you to see that either the flow is maintained, or at least ensure that you collect all the desired information. Okay. Moderator has the option to jump to any part. That's also another advantage of a checklist. Depending on how he feels the discussion is going, moderator has a choice to trigger more enthusiastic conversation by using another aspect of the checklist. So that he can do. But at the end, yes, he has to ensure that all aspects of the checklist are covered. All right.